Oh, yeah? Oh, I thought he wasn't getting out till June.
He got out early.
Wow.
They usually give you, if you're getting out, they'll
He had time that
Yeah.
he hadn't used.
yeah,
And
that's the
so
other
he
thing.
got out
You're lying.
today.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, we're just catching up on
We're just catching up on life. That's what we do. We do life, that's for sure. And we will continue to do life no matter what. So
That was going to be our slogan for a while, you remember that?
yeah, it's
Doing life and doing it real. Because that's what's important.
So I hope you're doing well, and I hope we're just, you know what, we're continuing the journey, and we'll probably wrap up, I don't know, it just depends on the conversation, probably wrap up Ruth tonight, and then we'll start Esther next week. I will put it out there now. Let's see, this Sunday is the 14th. On Sunday the 21st, we won't have church service, and on Wednesday the 24th, we will not have Bible study. Okay, I will be in Texas. Jenny and I will be in Texas, visiting grandkids. So we haven't seen them since October, and it's, even though their schedule's busy, we can get a few days with them, so we're going to go because it's time. And so we're going to go do that. So just so you know, and I will keep you informed. But right now we're just going to continue on. So we're coming into the last stage of this story of Ruth. Now remember, Ruth has pledged herself, kind of. She's asked Boaz to marry her, and she's kind of laid out, with her request, with her laying at his feet, and then her request. Boaz, being honorable, we're going to find out about that some more, said that, you know what, there's something we have to take care of first, and he sent her home. And the thing where we left it off last week was Naomi is telling Ruth now, in the last verse of chapter 3 says, Naomi said, "My daughter, wait until you find out how things go, for he won't rest unless he resolves this today." In other words, he's going to resolve this immediately. Boaz is going to make sure something happens, that Ruth is taken care of, that she's provided for. This is really truly this story of Ruth and Naomi and Boaz and all the players is really truly a story of character. And you see it as much as you see it throughout the story. You see it here, especially in the first part of this last chapter. But really what it says and what it should say to us is that our character is important, and God wants our character to shine, to be revealed, especially our spiritual nature. I mean, think about this. What have you seen, and what have you seen in Naomi, in her character, in her nature? What have you seen since we've been here?
She's changed from being bitter. I think she's changed in that she's trying to care for her daughter-in-law, to make sure that also that inheritance from her husband's family comes back to the family.
Right. So, but can you see that maybe she is so focused on the circumstances and the situation that's dictating how she reacts? Yet you see through this story, and as we even come into it, and we come to the end of it here, you're going to see that Naomi stops looking at the circumstances and starts seeing God's faithfulness even through her pain. She sees who God is, and God knows that God is continuing to reveal himself. What do you see in Ruth's character? Yes, very much so. Hardworking, right? She's willing to get in there and to make sure that needs are met. She's willing to.
She takes care of his faithful
yes. She's faithful. She's loyal.
Yeah.
Right?
Honorable.
She's obedient.
Mm-hmm.
She's patient. Mm-hmm. These are all really good things, really good things.
Like me.
Just like you, Bonnie. Very patient and everything else. So, what about Boaz? What do you see in his character and nature? There's a bunch of stuff in the refrigerator too.
Okay, I'm never sure which I'm allowed to get at. So
Yeah, you
Anything
can.
that's
usually when
out-
I get here, there's like nothing.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff, but there's a bunch of stuff in the refrigerator.
Lots of chicken in the refrigerator, in the freezer, I think, too. More in the freezer than.
Okay, back to what do we see in Boaz?
Well, he's
Like God, fair-minded, fair.
He's God loving, fair-minded,
yeah, honorable.
honorable, right?
He's Twitter painted. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
He's Twitter painted.
Yeah, he's enraptured with Ruth from looking at her and seeing
Oh,
his character.
okay.
Oh.
You know, if you ever watch the old Bambi movie, you know, the little stunt character Flower says that yeah. Anyway,
Okay,
the little rabbit's Twitter painted when he sees the little girl
Oh,
rabbit.
okay.
Twitter painted.
okay. He's compassionate. He's understanding. Okay. So we've seen these characters developed, right? Now we're gonna see how it all plays out. So, starting in chapter 4, starting there. Boaz went to the gate of the town. Remember, he told Ruth he was going to go find the other kinsman that could redeem her. Okay. Boaz went to the gate of the town and he sat down there. Soon the family redeemer Boaz had spoken about came by. Boaz said, "Come over here and sit down." So he went and sat down. Boaz, hey you.
Hi.
Hey,
Sorry
no,
I'm late. I
you're-
thought I was on.
You're right on time.
Yeah.
You're in perfect time. He's being honorable. He's being, he is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Now, notice this. He didn't go out and send his servants to run the guy down. This could have caused problem. It could have caused a friction. It could have caused family issues. He went to the front of the town and sat there and waited. Okay? Boaz sees him. He says, "Come over here. We need to talk." Then Boaz took 10 of the town's elders and said, "Sit here," and they sat down. Okay? He's doing this in front of witnesses. There's no secrets here. Gosh, don't you hate the gossip chain? Don't you hate that when people, man, they hear something and they're gonna tell everybody in the world about it. And sometimes we get so religious. Oh, you know what? We have to pray for so and so because they're struggling with, and it's really all it is about gossip. And Boaz is doing this out in public in front of respected people in the town. So there's no secrets here. Okay, so he's got these 10 men. He sat down. He says now to this redeemer. Now this redeemer's unknown. We never know who this guy is, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But we just know that he's part of the family of Perez. We know that he's part of Boaz's family, and he is actually a step closer to Elimelech, if you will, than Boaz is. Okay, so he has the first rights according to Levitical law to redeem Ruth. In other words, to preserve the family name and protect the family property. So he said to the redeemer, Naomi, who has returned from the territory of Moab, is selling the portion of the field that belonged to our brother Elimelech. I thought I should inform you. Buy it back in the presence of those seated here, in the presence of the elders of my people, if you want to redeem it. Do it. But if you do not want to redeem it, tell me so that I will know, because there isn't anyone other than you to redeem it, and I am next after you. So there's a choice here.
Right here.
You're in the Living Bible. Okay, remember I put 2 copies in
Oh, that's
there.
right, you did put two up.
I put two Bible copies in there.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was in the wrong spot.
Got it.
Yeah, you guys were reading. I put the Living Bible in there for us too. Okay,
Okay.
so Boaz is telling this man, he's really informed him what's going on. I think the man probably knew. He's part of the town. He probably knew what was going on. Again, people talk, right? You don't think it was a news to the town that Naomi showed back up? I'm sure
It's
that.
been a little while too.
Yes, this hasn't been. This wasn't just, hey, she showed up yesterday and today we're taking care of business.
No.
Ruth had been out farming, out harvesting and making grain, and then they came through this kind of encounter. So this took time. This all took time. This didn't just happen in a day. But in seeing this, and we talked about Boaz being honorable, right? He's taken the initiative in this. Again, he took the initiative with Ruth to keep her, make sure she was provided for, that she was taken care of, and yet she was treated honorably not only by the servants, but by everybody, including Boaz himself. So he's taken the initiative. He's being very proactive, right? He's sought the guy out. He's being very proactive. He's being transparent. Again, nothing's being hidden. He's in front of 10 elders. These are established people in the community. Okay? It's not about him. If Boaz was making it about him, he could have done all kinds of things. But he's being very clear about what the issue is, isn't he? Mm-hmm. He's not doing it in a way, hey, you have to do this. He's respectful. He's respecting this other kinsman, and he's being very respectful. But again, he's not making it about him. He's saying, here, this is your right. So you have a choice. You have a choice. And I hope in reading this you're paying attention, because the first thing the guy says, this unknown guy says, is, I want to redeem it. Mm-hmm. What is he really saying?
I want the property.
There you go.
It's going to make me more wealthy.
It's going to make, ultimately it can make me more wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about me. Right? So then Boaz, again, being honorable, being very clear, he says this: on the day on the day you buy the field from Naomi, you will acquire Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the deceased man, to perpetuate the man's name on his property. Oh, there's a catch. Wait a minute.
You got a wife and you got to have a baby with her, so he inherits the land, right?
So ultimately, the land stays in the family. This is what about this Levitical law was about. Land was everything. It's what provided for the families. It was not only just their inheritance, but it was what provided for them and let them be part of the community. This is important to understand. So, what do you think? How do you think this guy feels all of a sudden?
Trapped.
Yeah, isn't that a good point?
Back up.
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
Back up.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Back to the,
Exactly.
I don't want the property that bad.
Well,
I want the property. I don't want the woman, and I don't want to give it up.
Yeah.
I want to give it up to an
yeah,
heir.
it's all about me. He's thinking of his ultimate inheritance, his ultimate bank account, if you will.
But wouldn't then he have to sort of know that, okay, Elimelech died, the two sons died, there's no other man, and he's just thinking, score, I can
Score.
have
Score. For you know what? I'm getting a deal, is what he's thinking. I'm getting a deal. I'm just going to, you know what? I can buy it for a cheap price because she just has to be able to live, right? But we're going to find out that this guy doesn't, it's all about him and he doesn't want to provide. Verse 6 says this: the Redeemer replied, I can't redeem it myself, or I will ruin my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption, because I can't redeem it. It's not that he's not able. Again, just a few sentences before that, he says, I want to redeem it. He obviously had the finances, the ability to redeem it. All of a sudden, he's thinking about, wait, not only do I have to take the land, but I have to take the wife with it, and we have to have kids. That divides up my pie a little more.
The mother-in-law.
And the mother-in-law comes along with that too. Wait a minute. I didn't sign on for a mother-in-law. So, Well, yeah, I did. Yeah, you're right. So, verse 7 gives us an explanation of what takes place. It says, at an earlier period in Israel, a man removed his sandal and gave it to the other party in order to make the matter legally binding concerning the right of redemption or the exchange of property. This was the method of legally binding a transaction in Israel. It has something to do, from what I understand, I read a little bit about this today. It has something to do with walking on holy ground. And when you're handing your sandal to this other person, you're saying, I'm giving you the right to walk on this ground. Okay, so that makes it, and he's doing it. Here's the thing. This wasn't just done like, in the corner of the alley. I can't come back and say, wait, I didn't mean that.
I had my fingers crossed.
Yeah, I had my fingers crossed. He says he's doing this in front of witnesses. So the Redeemer verse 8 says this. So the Redeemer removed his sandal and said to Boaz, buy back the property yourself. So think about this for a minute. We've been talking for the last few weeks, and actually, because we know the story, we've been talking about this. This redemption is really, really an important theme in this story. Can you see that it draws a really strong parallel to our life in Christ? Okay? Think about it from this point. The unknown person and Boaz, he could have said, hey, look, I don't want, I want the land, but I don't want this and that, so let's do it together. You take this and I'll take that, and we'll share in it. No, there can only be one Redeemer. There can only be one. There can only be one Redeemer. So, and that's the way it is with us too. Redemption isn't shared. Our redemption is in Jesus Christ. Well, redemption is an act of grace. What are you doing? You're taking somebody that's in a desperate circumstance, in a desperate situation that has no way out, and you're giving them not only the solution, but you're giving it to them freely and with all the kindness and compassion you have. That's another parallel. For by grace are you saved through faith. It's not of yourself, it's a gift of God. And it's this act of compassion that's done. Redemption is observable. Hence the taking off of the sandal and passing the sandal. They're making it very public. It's something that's seen publicly. When we're redeemed, what's the first thing that happens when you're redeemed? Man, everybody sees. They see a change in you. They see something different about you. Okay, redemption is an act of love. Now, as Jenny pointed out, Boaz was what? Twitter
painted.
Twitter painted. Okay. That's one I'll have to put in my file. Okay. But it was more than that, because Boaz understood he just wasn't redeeming Ruth. He was enthralled with Ruth. There's no doubt about that. But he knew he was redeeming the whole family. He was redeeming Naomi. He was allowing the family to go on. He was protecting and preserving the family name. And here's the thing that we don't talk about in redemption, and we should talk about it a little more. Redemption costs.
Redemption what?
Costs. There's a price that comes with it. To redeem, the literal translation of redeeming, is to set free by paying a price. That's what it means to redeem something. How are we redeemed?
By the blood of Jesus Christ.
So how are we redeemed? At the cross.
Because he died for us.
There you go. So what did it cost? It cost God his best. Now, this redemption, this act of redemption that Boaz is performing, it's not costing him everything, but it's still costing him something. Okay? But here's the other side of that. What did this cost do for Naomi and for Ruth?
It set, as you would say, it set them up for success.
Okay.
It made provision for them.
It didn't cost them anything. In fact, it was something that they, no matter what they had, they couldn't pay for it. It was worth everything to them. It was priceless because it set them up, like Jane said, for success. It set them up to be able to live and to thrive in the place that God had placed them, to reflect God's love and compassion to everybody else. And here's the other thing. Again, when redemption is authentically done, when it's genuinely done, it doesn't change. It's not reversible. In other words, like I said, it's not a back alley deal where the guy changes his mind, says, no, I wanted that, or no, this or that. So Boaz gave this other redeemer the choice, and he made a choice. He chose himself over doing what the law had really instructed him to do. So, verse 9 says this, Boaz said to the elders and all the people, you are witnesses today that I am buying from Naomi everything that belonged to Elimelech, Chiliam, and Mahlon. I have also acquired Ruth the Moabitess. He's not pulling punches here. He's making it very clear that he understands and what's going on. You know, there still could have, because, again, you've got the Jews and you've got the Moabites who were enemies. They could have run her out of town still. He could have redeemed everything from Naomi, and so Naomi was taken care of, and said, Ruth, out. But what has he seen in Ruth? He's seen that character. He's seen that person. He's seen her beauty. You know, it's a really interesting thing that's one of the things that you hear about churches is you go to churches today, and there are some churches that are really on the outside and superficially are very attractive. You know, you go to a great big building, a beautiful building, and all the bells and whistles, the lights and everything else, and you walk in, and the first 30 minutes you're completely entertained. You've got the best musicians up there. They're playing the best music, and people are, yeah. But if there's no substance after that, I can tell you this, people aren't going to stay. They're going to come and be entertained for a little while, but if there's no substance, it's not going to mean anything. Boaz saw the substance. He knew exactly what he was getting, and he was very clear that he understood that. This was a person, Ruth was a person of character, a God-fearing woman. So he says, I've also acquired Ruth the Moabitess, Mahlon's widow, as my wife to perpetuate the deceased man's name on his property, so that his name will not disappear among his relatives or from the gate of his hometown. You are my witnesses. This is a very public declaration. I mean, now there's going to be a wedding still, and even though that this declaration was made, there's going to be a wedding, and Jewish weddings lasted 7 days, so the whole town's going to participate in the party. But there's this public declaration today that Boaz completely understands what's going on. So, remember I told you, I asked the question a few minutes ago about what happened to the unnamed relative. We're about to find out. Verse 11 says this, all of the people who were at the city gate, including the elders, said, we are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who is entering your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built the name of Israel. May you be powerful in Ephrathah, and your name be well known in Bethlehem. I'm going to stop right there for a second. Bethlehem, Ephrathah. You know about that?
We talked about that in chapter 1.
Yeah, we did. I'm just seeing if they remember. Do you remember?
It was another term for it. I know I looked it up. Because I thought it had to do with the tribe of Ephraim,
No.
but it does not.
Epaphroditus means fruitful. Okay? The Ephratites were fruitful people. Bethlehem is that town just south of Jerusalem. This is where they resided. Okay, this is where Jesus was born. Okay? It's interesting because you're seeing this, and it's going to come full circle right back to here when Jesus is born. This is where it started. We're going to find out in the genealogy here in just a minute. But this is full circle. Now, in verse 12, it says this, may your house become like the name of Perez, the son of Tamar, born to Judah, because the offspring the Lord will give you by this woman. What do you hear? You don't hear anything about this other guy, right? All of a sudden, he's just disappeared. The family's disappeared and everything else. It's Boaz and the family line of Perez, which he is part of. Okay? And they're referring to their ancestors because they are from the tribe of Judah. Okay? And they're referring to Leah and Rachel. So they're pronouncing this huge blessing. And here we find out this Bethlehem Epaphroditus. Okay? And Micah, the prophet Micah, prophesies that Bethlehem Epaphroditus is going to give something great to the world. Okay? And that prophecy is fulfilled in Luke chapter 2. You guys know Luke chapter 2. That's about the birth of Jesus. So here we're seeing, you're all of a sudden you're starting to see this line being drawn from here God is doing something. We don't, you start out, if you look at the story, and we can see the story, kind of seeing the story as we're standing in it. Naomi's hurting, Ruth's hurting. God, you know what? We don't know what God's doing. We hope he's doing something. Okay, they have to come back. They have to come back to the place where they started, hopefully, or where Naomi started, to get it right. But even then, there was still her. But you could all of a sudden start seeing God was doing something. Well, this is a continuation of that. This is a continuation that this marriage, this redemption, this marriage, and this blessing that the elders are pronouncing on Boaz and Ruth is going to be a continuation of that. Now, Boaz, it says in verse 13, Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. He slept with her and the Lord granted conception to her. And she gave birth to a son. Boom. Okay? So you're seeing that all of a sudden things are coming. Ruth, who we know that she was in Moab for a while, married, and didn't have kids. Here's the shame of things, because back then they didn't understand scientifically what happens. Mm-hmm. So who was always getting the blame for not having any kids?
Women.
Loretta. Just Loretta.
Yeah, just Loretta.
Or if they had girls, I can do it.
That's right. She can take it. Loretta's going, okay, just pile it on. I can take it. Women were the ones that were blamed. If women didn't have a child, it was always her fault. Always her fault. I'm sure that was discussed more than a little bit in Ruth and Orpah's marriage to Naomi's sons. I'm sure it's, where are my kids? How come you're not having kids? What's wrong with you? What's going on with you? Okay, so here we see Boaz and Ruth come together, and right away she has a son. Okay, the women said to Naomi, now they don't go to Ruth. They don't go to Ruth. Again, because they understand the family line and things like that. And here Naomi, who comes back to town and says, hey, call me bitter, call me Mara. You know what? I'm just, God's punishing me. Now all of a sudden, we're seeing the other side of that. The women are coming to Naomi and saying, blessed be the Lord who has not left you without a family redeemer today. May his name become well known in Israel. Well, who are we talking about?
Boaz.
Yeah. We've been talking about Boaz for about 3,500 years. Pretty well-known name, right? Is Boaz mentioned anywhere else in the Bible?
In the genealogies that
Well,
are in the New Testament.
In the genealogies. But he's not really talked about. Okay? This is it. For me, I read about these people that are mentioned kind of one time in the Bible, and they always capture my attention. I think about wow, because people talk about biblical characters, and of course you got Jesus, who is the main key, but people talk about David a lot. People talk about Peter or John, Moses, Noah, things like that. But they don't talk about people like Manasseh. They don't talk a lot. If they know a little bit, they'll talk a little more about Boaz. But if you went on the street and asked somebody who King David was, they might know. At least recognize the name. But if you went and said, "Do you know who Boaz is?" They're going to go, "Huh?"
Or King Josiah.
Yeah. So I think that this is very powerful. So the women said that, "Hey, Naomi, God worked it out." That's what really they're saying. God worked it out. They go on to say, "He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. Indeed, your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given birth to him." Wow. What a recognition. They recognize. Remember what I said a few minutes ago about where did I write it down? I wrote it down somewhere around here. Right there. Of course, right above where God is honored and He is praised by the way we live, because people recognize that you don't have to do anything. All you have to do is just live a God-honoring life, and people are going to see that, and they're going to give God the glory. That's what's happening here. So verse 16 says this: Naomi took the child, placed him on her lap, and became a mother to him. Actually, it should say a grandmother. The neighbor women said, "A son has been born to Naomi." This is because of the whole redemption thing. They named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. All of a sudden, we're starting to see here what's going on. David's genealogy, the last part. Now, these are the family records of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Amminadab. Amminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz, it doesn't say if Boaz had any other kids.
No.
That's the interesting thing. That to me is really interesting, because we know that he was older. Ruth is probably, I guess 30-ish, maybe 25, 30-ish. Remember, because women married young then. She's probably 30-ish, but Boaz is probably 50-ish. And again, so he's really, he's living. But it doesn't say he had any other kids. He fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse, and Jesse fathered David. So we see this in the line of Christ. This whole story is about. It's just an idea about how far God will go to ensure that we are provided for, protected, and that we understand that we're loved. That, you know what? People that know the story of Boaz and Ruth will very much mention that, Boaz loved Ruth. You could tell through the story he loved Ruth. Well, think about this. Think about how much God loves us. That pales in Boaz and Ruth's love pales in comparison to God's love for us. So this is really, to me, it's powerful in the way that it goes full circle. If you can see the bigger picture of what's going on in Scripture. Like I had mentioned, I think last week, the Old Testament is always pointing to the Messiah. So is the New Testament. It's always pointing to the Messiah. And we see it pointing this way, and it's full circle. Everything goes full circle. It's all about Jesus and our relationship with Him.
Amen.
Any questions about any of this?
The genealogy that's here, since it's the genealogy that it says of David, wouldn't necessarily have listed Boaz's other children, right? Because they're only listing that
The
lineage
ones that
line.
were
Yeah, but it would seem to me, again, and I'm reaching here, but this would seem to me that if Boaz had other family, they would mention that Boaz had other sons and daughters.
Right, somewhere in there. Even,
In there, yes, even in passing.
Or even like when he went to the threshing floor, his sons would have traditionally
Been there with him.
gone there with him to stand
And it was
guard
just
and
it was
help.
just his servants that were there, remember.
maybe Boaz didn't have any other kids.
Maybe he didn't. That's very possible. Oops, I didn't push the right button, I guess.
And it's possible that they had
We're in the dark, don't get scared.
more children.
There you go.
That they had more children after Obed. We don't know that.
Yeah, we don't know that either, but I would say that they probably had more children. And then this is why you're pointing out the whole genealogy thing and being the line of David, because that's where this happened. So that's important. Did you have something there, or no comments?
No comments other than to say hi to Pat and Tamara.
Hi, Pat and Tamara. I hope you guys are doing well. I want to read something to you today. We've wrapped up Ruth, and we're going to start. I'm going to give an overview of Esther next week. So for those of you that got your books, you can read part of the overview, but we're going to just talk about kind of an introduction. I want to read something to you today, especially you moms.
Who struggled. And dads who struggled.
Well, it was struggled. I keep telling you, I read, and reading the Word, it just speaks. And I've read through the Bible more than my share times. A lot of people I know read the Bible one time. Oh yeah, I read through the Bible once. And that's okay. Everybody's they've got to go on their own little journey. But we all have family issues, and since we got a couple minutes here, something just jumped out at me today in a way that it hasn't jumped out before. And we hear and we talk about things, and because we're real and because we're honest, we talk about family struggles and things like that. And so many times people feel, okay, I won't be general. I know the way I raise my kids, and I look at the way that they're behaving now, and sometimes I'm looking and going, did I do such a good job? I feel guilty about some things, and it's an honest thing. I'm not saying, oh, poor me or anything else. It's just one of those things. If you care about something, you're going to constantly evaluate it, right? Well, if you're following along in your yearly reading and you're reading with us through the Bible, you know that we're in Samuel. And you know the story of Samuel, right? Today we were in the 8th and 9th chapters. And, Samuel was born to Hannah who pleaded with God just to have a kid because she felt so worthless because she didn't have a kid, and the other wife was making fun of her because she was having kids. And Hannah promised if she had a son, she would dedicate him to the Lord as soon as she could, which he did. And Samuel served in the temple with Eli, the high priest, and learned in the temple. That's where he got his education and learned everything. And he learned there to listen to God. Okay, and then Samuel, as Eli got older, Eli's sons were supposed to step into the role of the priests, and you found out that they weren't being good guys. Here's the high priest raising sons that aren't being good men, and they end up getting killed because they had dishonored God. So Samuel grows up. We don't hear much about Samuel's marriage or anything like that. But in chapter 8 it says this: as Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judges over Israel. So obviously Samuel had a family. Okay? As Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons to be judges over Israel. Joel and Abijah, his oldest sons. So he obviously had more sons than that too. Joel and Abijah, his oldest sons, held court in Beersheba. But they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and perverted justice. Finally, all of the elders of Israel met at Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. Look, they told him, you are now old and your sons are not like you. Give us a king to judge us like all other nations have. We raised our kids. We did the best we could, but the truth is, there comes a point where everybody has a choice. Where everybody has a choice. It might not be in the way you raised them. It might not be in the you might. This choice may come completely out of left field, and it's like wow. And it goes contrary even to everything that you believe and who you are to the core of your being. Samuel was displeased not with his sons, because if he was displeased with his sons, he would have removed them. He was displeased, says Samuel was displeased with their request and went to the Lord for guidance. He was displeased with the request of the people that were seeing the actions. This is what I said. Remember, I just said this in regards to Boaz and Ruth and Naomi. These honorable actions, if you act honorably, they testify of God. If you live a God-honoring life, it testifies and God gets the praise. These guys aren't acting honorably, and it's causing dissension, but it's also causing Samuel's feelings to be hurt. And he's not handling it the right way. Now, God's gonna help him, God's gonna guide him, which is a good thing. Samuel still is going to be around for a while. Okay, but what I want to do is say, you know what? We all may have some things in there, and we just gotta. It comes down to this: we gotta trust God to do what God's going to do in people's lives. I know so many people that are hurting because their kids are adults now, and they're making choices, and the choices are so contrary to what they know.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go further. That they know is right.
Well, they know that they know what their parents have taught them is right. Remember, if you think about what it says in Proverbs, there's a way that seems right to a man, and that way ends in destruction. So they can, again, we can get back into this whole situational ethics, moral relativism conversation. That's not what this is about. This is about, I read this and I was going, wow, God, I know the way I raised my kids. And it kind of took me back, and I paused for a while, and I had to just kind of turn it back over to God and say, God, this has been a deep hurt with me for a long time. And I've got to trust you even in their lives, even in this difficulty. And it's not going to take me away. I guess the best way to say it's not going to take me away from being who you've purposed me to be. And even with this hurt, even with this thing that goes contrary, that causes me sometimes to scratch my head, I'm still going to do what you've purposed in me. So I was hoping, I wanted to share. I wanted to share that tonight, hopefully to encourage somebody or encourage you. But I thought it was just so appropriate for especially what the world is struggling with today, and the decisions that are being made, and
the poor decisions.
Yes, the very poor decisions all over the place, and it's really a shame. So
I never thought I'd live to see a day like today.
It's scary, but
Yeah, it
the
is.
things that are out there,
Mhm.
it's scary. The more and the things that are going on in the news, that, and just
But I keep saying God's in control.
well, it's gotta happen. I said this, I think, a while ago. I think for a long time we were on the doorstep of the tribulation. I think it's a lot closer than any of us realize right now. And I'm not saying that to because what it means to me is this whole thing about look up. Your redemption is coming, and whether you're a pre-tribulation rapture person or a mid-trib or a post-trib, what's going to happen is because God's in control. And I just think that God's really warning us. It's this last-ditch warning that's going out. When you have leaders that are so corrupt, and yet people are still building them up and wanting them to
I
lead.
know.
And I'm talking across the board.
Oh, no,
I'm talking across the board. I'm not talking about anybody specifically. I'm talking across the board.
Just the world today.
Yes. And, just the things that we're seeing and things like that. And it's really, really horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Is Samuel the one the prophet that went to David's house
Yes.
and said that David would be
Yes, Samuel's the one that anointed David.
anointed him to be
Yeah.
the next king? That's right.
And Samuel's also the one that called David out on his sin.
Yes.
With
No.
Bathsheba.
That was Nathan.
Oh,
Okay.
that's right. Yeah.
Nathan called him out.
I know that because I have a grandson named Nathan.
But Samuel was still around.
Yeah.
But Nathan was the yeah. Samuel still has even though it says he's old, he still has a long way to go.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some work to do still. So anyway, let me pray for us and we'll get us out of here and we'll get together on Sunday and have a good service. So Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for your word, for the fact that you keep revealing yourself and how you have orchestrated and laid things out for us to follow, to really point us to you. I just think of the words of Jesus. It says, no man can come unless the Father draws him. And you've left us this path that if we follow the path, you're drawing us to yourself. And in that, we find that redemption that we need. We find that grace and that compassion and that hope and that assurance of love, which guides us. Father, be with us. Thank you for everything. Take care of our families. Protect them. And Father, keep us prepared. Let us keep watching for you. This we pray in your precious name. Amen.